So if you've ever wondered what it's like in the international community in the city of Mobile and how important the city of Mobile is to the international community, not only in our area, in our state, but all around the world, well, in this episode, we're going to find out all the details.
G100 FM plays more of your favorite songs.
We're Del Shams,
Well, the proof is in the pricing.
Super Savings Store.
Hoffman Furniture will approve your credit.
You're listening to
I want to know where to go.
the Living in Mobile, Alabama podcast, where we talk about all things Mobile.
Career's got it, we guarantee it.
Now, here's your host, Jeff Jones.
40888, so don't be late.
So I'm so thankful for the guest we have on the podcast today, Mr. Jim Mather. And I've known Mr. Mather, I call him Jim, known him for several years. We go way back over 20 years ago. And before we talk about, the details of how he is connected with the international community in Mobile, we're going to give you a little backstory of how we connected. And I'm going to have to rely on Jim a little bit because I'm not exactly sure. But before we get to that, I also want to welcome our guest host today, Miss Avery Smith.
Hello, hello.
Thankful to have you. And we also have my main man, Caleb, working the buttons behind the scenes.
Hi.
We are so thankful to have everyone on board today. But when I thought about who could I have as a guest on the podcast who would be someone who could really peel back the curtain and talk about the big picture of Mobile, where we've been, where we're headed, and really give some insight that most people aren't going to know about, I thought Jim Mather would be the perfect guy. And I've known Jim for a long time, but Jim, tell me a little bit, do you remember how we connected exactly?
Yeah, it was through my son, Josh.
Okay.
He was wanting to take drum lessons. I think he was about 9 years old.
Oh, yeah. I remember.
We just relocated from Pakistan, South Asia, and he was pretty shy and was always drumming around anyway. So we were like, maybe we need some lessons to put to this. And then you were out of a music store.
Mm-hmm. MMI Music.
Yeah, MMI, and connected, and you tried your best to draw Josh out, and he excelled. You're a great drum teacher, and then we started connecting. Once in a while, you'd ask me some hard questions about direction and guidance, and
that's right, over
coffee and stuff like that.
That's right. I remember I think the last time we met and had a really one-on-one time was at Panera. Maybe it's been a few years ago. But I remember that was a crazy time in my life. Of course, I was playing drums, and then I was probably working with Josh before Big Daddy Weave started.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you were just, and then we had talked a little bit. You did a little concert gig out at South Alabama, and you were trying to sign on with potential company. And
wow.
Recording and then you took off, and then you connected with, of course, the Weaver brothers, who were old friends. I knew them since junior high school.
Wow! See, I did
when
not
they were in
know
junior
that.
high. Yeah, they were playing out at St. Paul's Methodist, I believe, out in Gulf Breeze.
That's it.
And I saw them when they were leading junior high worship.
Wow, man, such a small world. It's been a while, but I remember that. Connecting with you all, and I'd kind of heard about this thing you were doing. And of course, I was always scratching my head like, Jim, what exactly do you do? And so for someone who does not know who Jim Mather is not familiar with your connections with the international community in Mobile, take just a few minutes to really talk about what you do, your current role, and how you ended up here in Mobile, Alabama.
Yeah, the backstory is, I'm a registered nurse. My background prior to coming to Mobile was assisting in eye surgery in South Asia. I helped start an eye hospital. Wow. So we focused on cataract surgery and other eye diseases. I studied ophthalmology in London, the Institute of Ophthalmology. So from there to here was a huge shift because I'm a big researcher, and that'll probably come out in this interview. So I was doing a lot of research about international people abroad that study abroad. Mm-hmm. And I found out that in Mobile, Alabama, at that time I was in Pakistan, there were 200 Pakistanis studying in Mobile, which was the third largest in the U.S. So I thought, well, when I come back to the Gulf Coast, because my mission agency was based out of Florida at the time, I'll drive over and see what's going on in South Alabama.
And that's how it started.
And that's how it started, because they needed some advice on how to communicate with Pakistani students. There's a fledgling ministry called Friends of International. And they were like, hey, we don't know what to do. What's the culture? What's your background? What do you know? I gave them about an hour of my time, and drove away with my wife. And I said, boy, if we ever come stateside, it's kind of an interesting setup here. Maybe we could do something like this.
Interesting. And then, of course, that developed, and then you kind of take us to the next step of how you got here, and then how that ministry began to flourish.
Yeah, so when I got here, it was different type of ministry than I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. It was more focused on Christian students, but 95 or 90, even more, maybe 99% are not Christian. So I was just like, I'm going to flip it. So I was just like, okay, we're going to minister to everybody. It's not just going to be a Bible study. So, but it took me a few months to figure out what that would look like. So after about 3 months of prayer and walking around, the Lord spoke to me from Romans 12:10, where it says, honor one another above yourselves. So I began to ask the question, what does it mean to honor people that are different from me? And so the Lord gave me an idea of just doing cultural celebrations. So we started having big parties, honoring like Bangladeshi night or, you name the country. And we would say to the students, whatever you value and you brings honor to your culture, from your perspective, we want to facilitate a celebration. It's your gig, you do it, we're here to serve you. And that's how the relationships flourished and have continued we're in our 25th year.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
So I came for a 2-year commitment and blinked. And the first time I even had ability to pause was about 2007. So we went about 9 years before I'd realized I'd overstayed.
Well, it's interesting you talk about having celebrations. One of the things that I noticed was, you live really close to the University of South Alabama, which of course is convenient, right. But you, I guess, got tired of having off-site celebrations, and talk a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, we were busy. We weren't really thinking about it, but we were packed all the time in our home next to the campus. And one night, on a Friday night when we were having a big dinner, 2 guys were guests in the home. One was a carpenter, and the other was also construction kind of background. And he said he was kind of claustrophobic. Would he mind if I stepped outside? He was just like freaking out. He was just, it's just hard. South Asians, and some Asians in particular, don't mind crowds, but Europeans and Americans are struggling with crowded. So he stepped out and later approached me and said, hey, you need more room. This is too crowded. Mm-hmm. And then they proposed possibly expanding our home. Interesting.
And then quite an expansion it is.
Yeah, it's more. I guess it's probably about double the size, and really did need it because everybody was in my daughter's bedroom. I mean, it was every room, and outside. We'd have people out on the front lawn and out back, everywhere, looking in, trying to figure out what's going on.
Wow. Isn't that something?
How many people, the most people, do you think you had at one time?
Over 200.
I thought he was going to say 25.
Yeah, we had neighbors that thought I was a drug dealer.
That's hilarious. Wow.
They call the cops. The cops come sometimes, and we would feed them, and that usually chilled them out.
Oh, that's hilarious.
They were like, man, we know you're not doing anything bad. The police would come, but, man, your neighbors are going crazy. And then I became friends with my neighbors. The solution was always just to love people. And they just didn't understand, so I had to do some communication, and all things work together. Be respectful, but at the same time also explain what we're doing and get people on board.
And do you have scenarios where a lot of the students actually walk to your place?
Always, yeah.
That's what I was just thinking. Like, where did all these people park?
Yeah,
yeah. A lot of people just can walk over, or we pick them up, or the part we utilize on Friday or Saturday night. We just utilize Sal's parking right across the street.
Yeah. Wow.
But it can be an issue. I mean, so yeah, we had people that just work as parking attendants all night.
It's amazing.
I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible. I have, I've seen the addition. I've seen whenever there's a large group over there, and it's really interesting because if you were to take that as a snapshot, you were to take that moment and you were to think about, all of these people that are represented in this room. Let's take a picture of where that's going to be 20 years from now. Do you think about the impact that you're potentially having on all those people, not just around Mobile, but all around the world? Do you ever think about that big picture?
Yeah, I didn't think about it for the first several years, but then people would sometimes literally, we had a guy come in from San Diego, a guy from India. he flew in from San Diego to do a conference in New Orleans. He's a successful computer guy, very successful, and he knocked on my door unannounced on a Saturday morning and walked into the house with his iPhone on, and he was recording, just walking around my house. And he's like, hey, this is where my life changed.
Oh, man.
And he sat on the couch and said, you said this. And I was like, man, that was good. I don't remember saying that. So we have those kind of encounters. And he says, I wanted my children to know what happened to me when I was here. And then 3 years ago, a young man from Japan asked me to come to his wedding. He came to Christ in my house, and he is a nurse. I'm a nurse background education, so I helped mentor him through his nursing program, and went to the wedding. And then the former graduates from Japan, which is a numerous number, secretly had rented a 6th floor apartment, like basically converted an office space into a home environment, and replicated what we did in Mobile in my house.
Wow.
So we had a meal together in a high-rise in Tokyo.
Unbelievable.
And then went around the room, about 35 Japanese students with their wives and kids now. And they were like, this is what happened in our life. And so mind-blowing.
That is amazing.
So I never expected that, because sometimes you think, I only see it on the other side. But now, because of communication, social media stuff, people call us every day that are former students, and they just say, hey, listen, I want to tell you what's going on, the good, the bad, the ugly.
Wow, that is really something, thinking about the impact that you've had, the ministry has had, and honestly, we'll just never know. And, I think often we only hear a small portion whenever it's kind of like with reviews, people listening to this podcast, truthfully, you'll only hear a little bit of the reviews, but the reach is so much further than what you actually hear back from.
I'm glad that we don't know everything, because otherwise we'd either be depressed or too proud.
Absolutely.
So it's always a balance.
Absolutely. Well, I wanted to ask you, of course, Avery and I got together and we came up with some questions, because we really want to focus on the city of Mobile. Sure. We want to focus on the international community. I've helped several people who are not from the United States purchase houses, buy and sell and so forth. I worked with a missionary just a few months ago who was overseas. And so I know that the international community is vast. It's very diverse, but we really want to peel back the curtain today. And the reason why is because a lot of people who are international, they're not used to the culture in Mobile. They're considering moving here, and they want to know, what's it going to be like? I've had people ask me specifically, hey, what is the South Korean culture like? Is there an area in Mobile that they tend to hang out in, at restaurants and so forth? And I don't personally know all of the answers to that. I can ask people, but I thought it'd be great to have you on to kind of talk about that, give some insight. And so some of the questions that we have, the first one is, it's going to be related to South Alabama, but how do the international students, as soon as they come here, how do they first hear about you?
Okay, first of all, they do contact what's called Global USA, which is a division of the University of South Alabama, and they do the best that they can with the resources that they have as staff and administration, but then they look to my wife and I and our team, as well as some other international campus organizations, to basically be their hands off campus. So they just directly say, hey, could you pick these young people up at the airport? And then now, because of WhatsApp and all these other social media things, we get direct, like we get a call from a young woman from Bangladesh who says, hey, I'm getting in just before Christmas. I don't have any place to stay. Do you think you could help me? Because she can't get into her, what's called it used to be called the Grove, now it's called Central House.
Yeah.
So we're like, yeah, we can do it. And last August, when we had orientation, we hosted about 4 people for a week or 10 days. One from Spain, one from Ireland, just different countries, and they all just hang out and have meals with us until their housing opens up. And then from there, it's the Walmart, get food.
Yeah.
What about apartments? What's the best place? These are my limited budgets. What can I do? So it's just serving the university. So I feel like it's a service orientation. So whatever the needs are, we'll flex and we'll try to do what we can. So that's how the connection's initially made. But then from there, it's friendship.
Gotcha. Well, and I've heard in past interviews that you've done, you've talked about how many internationals there are in South Alabama. Of course, that changes every year.
Yeah.
Can you give a little picture of that?
Yeah, it does change. I think prior to COVID, we peaked at around 1,200 international students from somewhere around 80 to 100 countries. Now we're probably less than half that.
Okay.
Because we're in a recovery mode from all the air restrictions, all the State Department offices that were closed and lack of visas. And so it's going to be a gradual build back. So I think when I first came to South, we were around 700 international students. We built it up. When I say we, the university, and just creating a good environment so people, word of mouth, they want to come. So it'd be great if we could get back to, say, 1,000 or more.
Okay. And the overall campus of South Alabama, do you know what that runs now?
Probably around 15,000 or so.
Okay. So that's a substantial amount.
Yeah, I'd say, we're one of the higher percentages based on the number of students we have. There's these massive schools like Ohio State or whatever, but.
Well, and as far as international, now that's a small picture of South Alabama, but can you blow that out a little bit and talk about Mobile? Anyone who does any research on Mobile, they're going to find out that Mobile is a very diverse city, but often they're only thinking, of certain demographics or certain ethnicities. But can you talk a little bit about the big picture of Mobile and just an overview of that in general?
Yeah, I think we came laser focused on international students, which is what Friends of Internationals was started to focus on. But several years after we got to Mobile, just on one night, we got a knock at the door while we were having a meeting. And a really tall young man from Sudan knocked on our door, and he turned out to be a refugee. He was having and his family, he's one of 9 children. He was a young man. And they were having a lot of crises, and he had a family member at Providence Hospital. And word of mouth, he was just asking around, hey, who can help me and my family? And they told him to come to my house. Well, he walked from Providence Hospital to my house and knocked on the door. And I said, this can't be random. I said, come on in. And he told me his story. I said, tell everybody our story. We were actually having a group meeting. And he's one of the, basically one of these survivors of the Sudanese war. And a very dramatic story. And that led us to understanding the refugee community in Mobile. We're a refugee relocation center. And so things like that have happened. Then people are businessmen relocating, young families relocating, and they're looking to connect. So word of mouth, again, it's just all word of mouth. They sort of want to be a part of our community. One of the things my wife did was she found out that there was a lot of international women whose husbands were at big companies in the area, and they had young children, or they were just looking for connections. And so she formed a group informally, which is still going on to 20 plus years, called International Ladies Tea. So they do a meal once a month, and they do a topic, educational, cultural, community-based, just to build relationship. And that she just went to a meeting just yesterday. So that can be as many as 40, 50 women, and children are welcome. So through that, what we're discovering is growth. And as you have probably talked about on this program before, international businesses are relocating here.
Yes.
They've always been here. Keep in mind, this is a port city. We've always had international businesses, but I think there's a greater awareness, not just that they're here, but they're a value. Their cultures are a value. So the university is a key, because universities, young people, they're in learning mode. So when you can create cultural celebrations like the Mobile International Festival and others, the Latin Festival, Greek Festival, and others that are just a little bit more informal, that people will come.
Do you find that in general, internationals feel welcome here? And we're going to talk a little bit about what Mobile does well, what Mobile could work on. But can you speak to that a little bit through the lens of international families, say their overall impression of Mobile, whether they feel welcome or not? Because here's the thing. I want to make sure, sometimes people, they think about what I do as a real estate agent. They think I sugarcoat things because I'm just showing the positive. But no, I want to paint the whole picture. I want to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, what we can improve on, and so forth. But can you talk about that a little bit through the lens of how internationals feel when they come to Mobile, whether they're welcome, what can we work on, what do we do well, and so forth.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges is I think that, my perspective is clouded as well because I'm focused on giving people a good experience, welcome. I use the word belonging.
Mm-hmm.
I really emphasize that. People can belong. You can come to our group. I have a Christian ministry, but everybody's welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're interested in Christianity or you're Muslim or you're Hindu, you're Buddhist, you're agnostic, you're atheist, hey, you're welcome, period, end of story. But so the experience that people have is dependent upon the experience that we have.
Okay.
Let me explain that. If you haven't traveled, if you haven't experienced other types of food, other types of music, when you meet somebody that's different than you, that can be a fearful experience or an uncomfortable one. So I view one of my roles after being here for a few years, I realized, I'm glad I get to be with international students, but I also have a responsibility to educate my community. If people are interested, hey, how do I become more culturally sensitive? And I think it's something that every institution, every family, every church, just every human should develop. So it's very varied. There's no one easy answer, but I do find in general, if people have not traveled much, they might come across, or not purposely, but maybe just because of lack of experience, come across uncomfortable, and that can make the other person feel uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those things that
the fear of the unknown.
The fear of the unknown creates verbal and nonverbal responses, which are, make people feel nervous. So we try to constantly, when we're with people that are not comfortable, we're like, yeah, you can come. And we've had people become volunteers in our ministry, say, hey, I'm very uncomfortable, but I'm going to hang in there. And I think that's the key, because I when I first traveled overseas, I was very uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So there's the human experience. The thing that draws international students here, just as an example, are some real common human things. And one of it is it's warm. Mm-hmm. So South Asia is almost the same exact temperature and humidity. And so they don't freeze. Mm-hmm. So if they have a choice, international students from that region in Africa would definitely prefer Mobile to New York.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I just got back from the Philippines a couple days ago. And Mobile is pretty chilly the last couple of days. So I was just like, wow. So I can imagine what it must be like if they sign up for university in Minnesota or something like that. They might not last a week.
Well, I thought it was interesting in an interview I listened to, I guess it was about a week or so ago. One of the things that you touched on was how there was a scenario you read in a magazine. There was an ad for the South Alabama for the University of South Alabama, yes. And how the king. Can you kind of touch on that a little bit, or do you remember that?
Well, what I initially heard about South Alabama was there was a national news magazine called The Herald out of the largest city called Karachi, which I just read everything. Mm-hmm. And it mentioned that South had the third highest percentage of Pakistani students at the time. There were other two major universities, UT Austin and Houston University, I think. Yeah, so that's what initially drew me, because I speak the language, Urdu. My wife and I are fluent in that, and so we were like, oh, well, that'd be cool, to be able to use the language skills that we have, and my kids were used to that language. And yeah, so the first couple of years of Mobile, I spoke Urdu every day. And yeah, language is extremely important. Mm-hmm. Learning. My wife's very good at learning language. I'm slower, but I see the value. Mm-hmm. And so language, food, music, dress, all of these are extremely important. And we've had students in our home that graduated from South that have started restaurants here in Mobile.
I know Avery was going to ask about that in a little bit.
I have two questions.
Yeah, go
one
right
was,
ahead.
How many languages do you speak?
Well, just fluently, just one other. But I understand a lot of different words from different languages, and that's my stronger gift, is when I am in a different culture and I pick up pretty quickly. That's what I first learned, was I could understand people pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. I don't know why, but that's helpful.
Wow.
But speaking is very honoring. So we were trying to pick up even a dialect in Philippines last week. We were just only there 2 weeks. But my wife was able to speak some before we left. And
so I have a graphic artist who's part of the team. I mean, he's been just vital in everything I've done, probably for the last 10 years or so. And one of the things that I've done, primarily I speak with him. So there's not a lot of voice connection, but it's just been fascinating, the culture in the Philippines. I mean, he is so gifted and so talented. I wish that I could speak his language more, but he has just been vital. And what I've found is there are a lot of businesses in the United States that work with people in the Philippines.
Yes.
I mean, that's a huge thing.
It is. Yeah, I met people while I was there whose adult children are working, communicating all over the world.
It's really vital to this whole working from home culture that we have. It's like they've been doing that for a long time.
Long time. Yeah, I think we need to. If I had my life to live over again, I'd do a number of things. And one of the things I would do is, I'd be working in the context of a university, and I'd be teaching cross-cultural communication. I'd be teaching languages from really way before college. I mean, we should be doing language teaching from first grade onward, and that's what I noticed while I was there in the Philippines. Just got back was, these kids are aggressive in learning English.
Wow, that's really something. So go ahead and continue with your other question.
Yeah, go right ahead.
It's about food. My favorite thing in the world.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have like a favorite dish or that you've ever experienced in your parties or?
Yeah, I'd say probably any kind of South Asian food, which is surprising because it's pretty spicy. But, I lived in Pakistan for 5 years. So Pakistan and India are similar, but there's real regional differences. And then I've been in Nepal now 4 times because of a former student that asked me for years to go. And then the young man that graduated from South with a business degree has opened up 2 restaurants, one in Mobile and one in the Eastern Shore. So both Nepali, the Yak, and Lama. He's incredible. He's like an entrepreneur. He's got 4 or 5 businesses that he's started since he's been here. So Nepali food is incredible.
Wow.
Of course, Chinese food, Japanese food.
At your parties, when you have like the 200 people, are they all making a dish? Do you make the dishes or?
Yeah, everybody contributes.
Okay.
There's kind of this. We might have a focus like an Indian potluck, but then hey, if you want to bring your thing, from the Dominican Republic, or my wife's from Italian background. My number one favorite food is Italian.
Okay.
I bet.
Because that's the big joke. When I was 10 years old, my youngest aunt married a guy from Italy, and he brought Italian food. He cooked Italian food for Thanksgiving, which was like a mortal sin. Yeah. But I ate spaghetti and blurted out as a 10-year-old, "I'm going to marry an Italian," and everybody laughed. And I stayed focused.
Yeah.
That's it. You had a drive.
Laser-like focus.
That's some good spaghetti.
So Avery had an experience recently at a restaurant in Mobile. I can't remember the name of it. It's off. What is it? Off Old Shell. Yeah, it's off Old Shell Road. Talk a little bit about that. What?
Have you been to the International Food Pack?
Sure.
Okay, that's where I had this like veggie Mediterranean
Yeah,
sandwich.
the owner is Mr. Reza, and he's from Iran initially. But he graduated from South as a chemical engineer, and it was during the difficult period of our relationship with Iran, at the acute phase, and none of the Iranians were welcome back in Iran. So there's a strong Iranian community that are all guys that got stranded, and their wives who got stranded because they had to stay, and they were granted eventually asylum and citizenship.
So what he's built there, I mean, I walked in, and I'm embarrassed by how picky I am.
It's kind of sad.
It is a true social dilemma. That's what I tell everybody. I'm just a very finicky eater. But when I walk in that door, I mean, it's not. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, they have everything you can imagine in there. Yeah. So I can see that's a popular place with internationals in Mobile.
It is popular. We keep a running list in our house of all the international groceries. Okay. Various kinds, Vietnamese, various African stores that focus on particular regions of Africa. Yeah, there's probably 15 or 20 different international groceries of some kind. Raises a
we
little.
Need that list.
Yeah. Mary's got the list, and We update it quite a bit because it does change, but we've got various Indian places, Vietnamese, Jamaican, you name it, it's out there.
So one of the things that we
because
see,
people, as you said, people want their food.
yeah, exactly.
And Walmart and all the others, surprisingly, has really adjusted because they recognize, hey, we can't lose these people completely. So they have their own smaller sections, but they're developing.
So with restaurants in Mobile, of course, there are a lot of Mexican restaurants, Italian restaurants and so forth. But often, you can joke about, well, it says, Mexican, but it's not authentic, or it says this. Can you talk a little bit about some restaurants in Mobile that really align with the culture and would be considered more authentic? Is there something that, is there a restaurant that stands out, or a couple?
I think if you go to the Yak on Dauphin or on Fairhope,
okay,
you're going to get, there's no way around it. It's just Nepali, which is different from Indian. And so, yeah, it's funny because we had a neurosurgeon from China as our neighbor. He's now relocated because of his job. But, his wife's incredible Chinese cook. So, they're most of the Chinese restaurants in Mobile are really Americanized.
That's what I was going to say.
So, Chinese food is, because people, it's different. I guess it's just they feel like their business model, they're worried that people haven't really traveled to China. So perhaps, man, we better adjust. And a lot of times it's not Chinese owners. It could be Vietnamese owners or different ethnicities that are running it. So it's just run as a Americanized version. But the newer ethnic restaurants are more accurately genuine. Like if you go to Seven Spices.
I've heard about that's off airport, right?
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, that's really good.
Good
Jerusalem Cafe, of course, which is won many different awards. You're going to get real legit. And then there's a lot of great Thai places. Thai seems to be the hot, quote unquote, everybody wants to eat Thai, and there's really good Thai.
Have you by chance been to Eddie's Mexican restaurant off of 90?
I haven't.
No, not many people have heard of it, but Honduran food. Oh my gosh. It is the best I've ever had.
That's great.
It's
we like the tips because
that's it.
My wife and I we're always going on places for a date night, so we got to have good recommendations.
Well, I highly suggest it. They don't. A lot of them don't speak English. So
you
got
say
a point.
Eddie's, yeah.
Eddie's,
Well, I need to be doing better in my Spanish anyway.
Well, I'm just on the eternal hunt for the best pizza in Mobile.
Yeah. You're the chicken guy.
That's it, the chicken finger guy.
He's found that with Fuzakli, so he's good
very
there.
Much. It's funny with pizza. So I'm a fan of New York style pizza.
Yeah, sure.
And so I've been, now I like Chicago style pizza. I go to Chicago, I'm going to get Giordano's. There are several locations. And then, of course, the competitor, Lou Malnati's. Have you ever had?
I haven't.
I highly recommend either one of those. But then ultimately, I guess if I could have my dream, it's New York style pizza. Yeah. Got pizza from John's in the Village on Bleecker Street in New York, just the best I've ever had. And so ever since having that, I came home and I've been on this mission. And so we've got Nino's Pizza, which is on Hillcrest near the corner of Grelot. And then we've got Joe's Pizza, which is across from Baker. Have you?
Yeah.
Are you a fan of that style?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I like Joe's, and surprisingly, what I think, I don't want to throw them under the bus, but one of the worst names of a pizza place, but some of the best pizza ever, Sim's House of Pizza.
Oh, it's so good.
It is so good. If you've not been to Sim's House of Pizza on Snow Road.
Some good tips.
Absolutely. Great stuff. So highly recommend that. So how many, you mentioned that there were somewhere between 80 and 100 international students represented at the University of South Alabama, but do you know?
There's probably 400 or 500, but there's about 80 nations.
But do you know in terms of the scope of Mobile, how many countries are represented?
Well, I can just tell you, this week we're actually recording just prior to Mobile International Festival. It's going on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for school children.
Okay.
From elementary all the way to high school. Today's high school. But tomorrow will be a community day. And always they're represented 60 different countries at the festival. So these are individual nations or cultures represented. So it's got to be at least 60s, probably more than that.
Way more than that.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Because it is obviously a big investment of time. If you become a part of the International Festival, you're committing to have a table, you're committing to serve food, provide some sort of cultural input, either music, dress, dance, something. And we've helped a little bit with that over the years. But thank God for that festival.
I can imagine that festival has a huge impact. I think it exposes, obviously, people. I mean, imagine the children, elementary school, middle school, whoever goes, going and understanding like, no, this is for real. I mean, our city. What's the flags? The
Six Flags.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have this rich history, but I think that a lot of times people can do. I've alluded to this in the past. They can stay out in West Mobile or stay out in Sims, stay out in their community and not really connect with those that are not just like them. But I think it's really a great program that really
it started by us. We should, honor the legacy of Estella Dorn from the Philippines.
Oh, wow.
When she was a young woman, I think just out of college, she's working with, I think, the State Department or something like that, and met her husband, who's a colonel in the Air Force. And so she led that for 30 years, and now it's been passed on to a team and carries on probably 37, 38, 39 years or something.
Wow, what a legacy.
She started in her backyard.
Yeah. Isn't that something?
So, yeah, one person with a vision.
That's all it takes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And dedication.
So what do you think, or what do you see as the future of Mobile with what they're doing at the port, what they're doing, the different businesses? Of course, we have the new mega site. Have you heard about that? It's coming to Baldwin County, of course, in the Bay Minette area. I'm working with a client right now. House is closing next week, and they're moving from Canada. They're working for one of the suppliers who is connected with Airbus, or actually, I guess that whole entire group down there. Can you talk a little bit about where you see the future of Mobile going with what's happening? Because you probably have your ear to the ground and you're hearing some things that we're not privy to.
Yeah, I mean, the future is in the U.S. is in terms of movement is definitely southeast. So Mobile is a big part of that because we've got room. I'm from the Northeast. I'm from Philly. I was born in Philadelphia, my wife's from New York. And there's nowhere to move. There's nowhere to move literally, physically, on the roads. The infrastructure is burdened, old. The South will have to build and develop, and that means growth. But I think the future is also not just regional, it's global. So people have to think, where do I want to live? Do I want to, live in a cold weather? Do I want to live in warm weather? Do I like the ocean? What do I like? And then unusually, it's almost like a rebirth of what made Mobile's first great growth spurt, which was World War II. This time it's a positive, it's a peacetime growth. But it's the port. I mean, you have a port now that there's visionary leadership that's saying expand it. And then you've got airplane manufacturing. For years Boeing was king and they ruled the roost. But now it's more of a competitive environment. So we got turned down. We got dissed by Boeing. And
Fusakli's had a couple things to say about that.
So now Airbus is, what goes around comes around. If you sow good, you're going to reap good. And Mobile kept its head together, its heart together, and now they're beginning to reap the rewards of growth. So it's a very reasonable pricing in terms of, I don't think I could have started what I started at South had I been in the Northeast. My sister wanted me to go to Princeton because she lives close to Princeton. She's like, she knew what my vision was. She's like, hey, Princeton could use your help over there. But South, I had pretty much zero money when I got here. So it was much more affordable as somebody that more or less lives by faith to get by and pay my rent initially, and then now I own a home. But.
Yeah. So whenever the phone rings and someone is of a different ethnicity, international background, they're wondering about job opportunities in Mobile. What do you hear on the ground as far as that's concerned? Do you hear that's really growing with the community that you're working with, students that are getting their degree and maybe considering staying, or do you have any insight into that?
I think at the beginning, like when I first got here in the 90s, late 90s, definitely the majority would relocate because there just weren't the opportunities. But, a lot more. They're getting more aggressive in recruiting. I mean, by Airbus and some of the international companies, but there still is a learning curve. And I would say smaller to medium-sized businesses really need to start thinking about becoming comfortable in recruiting people who might need more work, because people hear about visas and they hear about what the paperwork might be involved. They get so nervous and they miss out on quality people sometimes. So we have more qualified people that relocate internationally out of here. I'm talking about very young, just out of college, simply because a business person might say, yeah, I don't really want to do that. I don't know how to do that.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about from the employer standpoint.
Yeah, employers really need to. A lot of the frustration that employers are feeling is because they're not recognizing what's out there. Mm-hmm. And they need to also learn skills, and HRs need to step up. Human resource people need to step up and realize, hey, if you really want hardworking people, you're going to have to learn some skills yourself.
Isn't that interesting? You touched on that. Really want hardworking people. I have seen that time and time again. People from different cultures. It's just a different mindset, and sometimes, I mean, not to throw our own city or country under the bus, but sometimes there's a more laid back approach, and they're not, hustling and not as much of a go-getter in our culture. Whereas overseas, I think, and it could have a lot to do with maybe coming from a struggle or coming from a different background that puts the opportunity that's afforded to them into perspective.
Yeah, I think there's 2 or 3 elements there. One is, the other thing that communities benefit from with international and legal immigration is you've got incredible entrepreneurial spirits. So it's almost like if you get on a plane and you decide to leave your family behind to get an education, these are the select people that are already risk takers. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like that in and of itself leaves 98% of the people out of the picture. So you're getting the elite of a particular nation, and they've had to go through so much to get there and rise above literally millions and millions of people. Say India as an example. Mm-hmm. To get a visa at a university in the U.S., it's extremely difficult. So they're already excellent people at the top of their class in a city of 20 million or 30 million. And you're getting the best of the best. And so then they say, I'm going to do this. Mm-hmm. And they're going to do whatever it takes to accomplish their goal. And they're used to overcoming adversity. And then the entrepreneur thing that as the city is that they wind up hiring people. They build, all the high-tech companies that are driving America's economy are all former international students. Google was 2 Stanford guys that were math geniuses. They were international students that had a vision, and they created something in their head. And we're all beneficiaries of international students persevering and rising to the top.
Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting to hear you talk about how if they're over here, they've already been through so many challenges and so many hurdles and things and so, yeah, I think that's really a strong challenge to local businesses in Mobile to wake up and to be willing to put in the work, be willing to go that effort to take advantage of the international.
Yeah, don't be afraid. Like say you interview somebody and they have an accent, mm-hmm. and you say, I've had a guy for one of our incredible students, his name Caleb Guvadi, who is now working in the West Coast because he struggled. He had a few interviews here. He has an accent, and employers said, I don't know. I'm not sure my customers can really deal with that. Mm. So we lose somebody, and we've lost a few like that who are. But I think the future is that it will happen. It's just that local, international employers have to because they recognize the skill set, or they're just used to it. Like, so he wound up getting hired by Amazon.
Okay.
Amazon, so his whole team is from every other. He's got on a team of 15 people, and everyone's a different country. So I think if we really, really want to see the future, Mobile, we've got to train our employers, our HR people, our teams mm-hmm. to embrace diversity. I said, you never get diversity if you don't pursue it. That's one of my core values.
Wow, we could stop on that right there and focus. Can you say that again?
You'll never obtain diversity unless you pursue it actively. Mm-hmm. So it's a decision. I'm going to make myself uncomfortable. I'm going to learn something I have never understood or learned before. I'm going to listen more than talk. And I'm going to empower people that are different.
Wow, that's good.
It sure is.
That's good. And on that great note, I'm going to say that this podcast is sponsored in part by Yellowhammer Coffee. For those of you who do not know, my friend Jeff Roberts, actually Jim and I were talking about Jeff earlier. He had this vision for a local coffee company, and it really grew and developed. And now, I mean, just to think about what he has done with that company, multiple locations, he's got a great team, and he really focuses on a different, unique customer experience. So we're thankful for Jeff and Yellowhammer Coffee and helping us make this podcast possible. And on that note, I'm going to pass this over to Avery. Now, let me say this before I do. Jim, number one, I mean, we're grateful that you joined us. I mean, just what an honor to have you share with us and peel back the curtain on the international community in Mobile. But how do people get in touch with you if they have questions, or if they want to partner with you, or any way they want to connect? What's the best way to do that?
I'll just give you my number.
Okay. Well, we'll do that. If you want to,
Yeah, you can just put it up.
Okay, that's what we'll do. We'll have a message below.
A little graphic or something.
Okay, we'll do that. And so that will allow them to connect with you. And
yeah, because I'm on social media, but if they really would like to have a question,
okay,
related to anything international or what we're doing or whatever, they can just get my cell number.
Okay, so reach out to me, and I will connect you with Jim Mather. And so thankful for that. And then the other thing, we always have guests who are on. We put them through what's called the lightning round.
Okay, sure.
And so what this is it's a quick yes or no or pick, between the two. Not a lot of thought, not a lot of description, unless you feel you absolutely have to. And then, of course, the last thing we'll say is you can plead the fifth if you have to. But all these topics, they pertain to Mobile, unique to Mobile. And so we'd love to hear your opinion and give your thoughts.
Sure. Right. So I'll start with Foozackley's or Zaxby's?
Zaxby's.
Dreamland or Meat Boss?
Meat Boss.
Old Dutch or Marble Slab?
Old Dutch.
Cravers or the original Oyster House?
Original Oyster House.
The Bayway or the Causeway?
Causeway.
Airport Boulevard or Cottage Hill Road?
Cottage Hill.
Midtown or West Mobile?
Midtown.
Fox 10, WKRG or WPMI News?
WKRG.
Yellowhammer or Starbucks?
Yellowhammer.
Briquettes or Longhorn?
Briquettes.
Dolphin Island or Gulf Shores?
Gulf Shores.
Right. And then Alabama or Auburn?
Penn State.
There you go. And they played Auburn this year, and
they're not doing too good either. But Auburn's really in a pickle.
It's been wild. A lot of my money's going to Auburn. So I have a daughter there now. So
wow, what year is she in?
She's a freshman.
Okay, congratulations.
So yeah, she's excited.
It's a great school.
It is. She really likes it. Well, Jim, man, just so thankful that you would join us. We're glad that you helped us understand a little more about the community. And if anybody's listening, number one, hey, leave us a review. We love getting reviews. You can do that through the different platforms that you listen. And if you're watching this on YouTube, also we have another channel called Living in Mobile, and that's where I, have neighborhood tours and features and talk about all things Mobile. But we're grateful that you joined us, and I can't wait for the next episode. But until then, keep listening and spread the word.